Wouldn't you stop funding clown colleges in Argentina? If you had a true emergency, like this pandemic, wouldn't you stop building roads and gas stations in Pakistan? If you had a true emergency like this corona pandemic, wouldn't you immediately stop spending money studying why drunk people fall down more than sober people? I would ask every American, if you were faced with a personal crisis and how to spend extra money, and you had to spend extra money on food and medicine, money that you had to borrow from a relative, wouldn't you prioritize your resources and immediately stop loaning money to friends overseas for their children to go to, for example, space camp? Wouldn't you stop funding clown colleges in Argentina? If you had a true emergency, like this pandemic, wouldn't you stop building roads and gas stations in Pakistan? If you had a true emergency like this corona pandemic, wouldn't you immediately stop spending money studying why drunk people fall down more than sober people? I ask my colleagues to stop wasting money in this time of crisis. It is our job and our responsibility to conserve these resources. Why is this important? Why shouldn't we just print or borrow the money instead of making cuts in things like foreign aid? Because next time, maybe in the not too distant future, our children may not even be able to borrow their way out of a crisis. Our dollar will be devalued, our economy ruined, all because we will have been profligate fools with our resources. All because we refuse to do what we were elected to do, which is to prioritize the truly vital, such as coronavirus relief and medical research, over the extraneous, such as spending money on clown colleges, gas stations, and roads in Afghanistan. To my fellow Americans, remain hopeful, remain kind, remain faithful, and above all, remain resilient. This latest pandemic already has heroes, some known, but most of these heroes are unknown, doctors and nurses on the front lines. The innovators among us are already putting forth potential treatments, possible cures. A half dozen antiviral medications are in the final stages of study. Researchers believe that an old drug developed for malaria may help. Reports indicate that scientists will likely set a speed record in developing a vaccine. Now is not the time for malaise. Now is the time for optimism. By summer, there is a very good chance we will be in the recovery phase. The history of pandemics indicates a strong likelihood that the peak of infections and mortality could pass in a few weeks to a few months. Congress should remain calm and try not to explode the debt in our response. We should never forget fiscal responsibility, even in a crisis. We should pay for any new federal funding by taking that money from areas of the budget where it is not being wisely used. My amendment does just that. My amendment says that if you want to apply for money from the government through the child tax credit program, this is money that the government gives to people, that you have to be a legitimate person. You have to have a Social Security number. We've been talking about this reform for a decade now, and we never seem to be able to get it passed. It has nothing to do with not liking immigrants. It has to do with saying taxpayer money shouldn't go to non-people. You should have to be a person to get taxpayer money. Just says you have to have a Social Security number. People estimate this would save $26 billion. That goes a long way towards paying for this bill. I think we should also end the war in Afghanistan. We're spending $50 billion a year on that war, and it's mostly not to fight war, it's to build stuff for them. It's to build infrastructure for them. We've got a lot of problems with infrastructure in our own country without spending $50 billion a year in Afghanistan. If we have a true emergency now, it's our job to prioritize, to take that money from where it's not being spent wisely to spend it on something that we need at the moment. My bill also allows the president to look throughout the budget and transfer money from any other wasteful areas. If you look at our budget, it's loaded with waste. Nobody ever calls the waste. And we have an emergency and they say, let's just borrow more money. Instead, what we should do is we should actually take money that's unwisely spent and move it over to account for this emergency. What I'm offering is a very reasonable proposal. We simply pay for this emergency bill by taking money from other areas of waste in the budget.